Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel Sparkle English. Today is going to be a quick lesson on whether we use a single or double space after periods. Now this topic is debated a lot online. If you are in your 30s or older, you were probably told to always use a double space after a period. There's a reason for this, and there's a reason why now this has changed. So please watch till the end of this video to learn why. So first of all, in English we use periods at the end of declarative sentences. Let's look at these two example sentences. I'm going to the supermarket. Do you need anything? In this first example, we only have one space after the period. In this second example, we have two spaces. So which is correct? One space or two spaces? Or are they both correct? Well, let's go back a bit and talk about when we used to use typewriters. So the practice of using two spaces after a period started with typewriters. When I was around 12 years old, we got our first computer, but before that, I loved using my parents' typewriter. And the reason we used two spaces is because typewriters used monospaced fonts, and that means each character occupies the same amount of space, and this makes sentences harder to read. Let me show you a visual example. My name is Jennifer. I am Canadian. This is a monospaced font. What that means is that the amount of space given to an M, for example, is the same as the amount of space given to an I. If you look here, I've underlined certain characters so you can see that the amount of space given to an I is the same as an M or any other letter. So because each character has the same width, this can cause uneven spacing and visual gaps that interrupt the reading flow. So it was difficult to see when a sentence ended or not. So using two spaces made it easier to read and understand when a sentence had ended. So now let's talk about digital fonts. Let's look at this font example here. This is Times New Roman, and this is a proportional font. You can see with the second example, the amount of space given to an M is much greater than to the letter I or to an E. So because digital fonts are proportionally spaced, each character only takes up as much space as it needs. So this enhances readability and it reduces the need for double spacing. So, major style guides like the APA, MLA, and Chicago Manual of Style now recommend using only one space after periods in their publications. In 2020, Microsoft Word updated its software so that two spaces between sentences would be considered an error. And this rule is the same if it's after a question mark or after an exclamation mark. We should only be using one space after any ending punctuation mark. I want to show you another example of monospaced fonts versus proportional fonts. So here is a paragraph in proportional font. Again, this is Times New Roman. And here is an example in a monospaced font. So you can see that proportional fonts make it much easier to read the sentences and to see with just a single space when the sentence has ended. Whereas in the second paragraph, it's quite hard to read because everything is stretched out because each character occupies the same amount of space. So now let's look at these two paragraphs, which are both proportional fonts, and see if you can determine which one uses the spacing correctly after periods. Okay, so the first paragraph is correct and the second paragraph is incorrect by today's standards. We have a single space after this period here and this period here. Whereas in the second paragraph, we have two spaces, and that is no longer considered correct or necessary. Now, I'm sure some of you are saying, I have been putting 2 spaces after a period for decades. I am not going to stop now. And honestly, that's your choice. The most important thing is consistency. I know it's a hard habit to break if you've been doing it for so long. It's really just important that you are consistent. If you do 2 spaces after one period, make sure you do that throughout your text. But if you are hoping to become a writer or you're writing for a publication, they will expect you to use a single space after a period. Or maybe you're in school right now and you have a teacher from a different generation who insists you use 2 spaces. The most important thing is to follow your instructor's instructions. So now I want to do a very quick quiz to see if you can identify the fonts in these paragraphs, if they are monospaced or proportional. So let's begin. Here is number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, and number 5. Okay, so number 1, the font used here is proportional. So I'll put a P for proportional. The amount of space given depends on the size of the letter. The second paragraph, this is monospaced. This is most similar to a typewriter. The amount of space given to each character is the same. The third paragraph is also monospaced. The fourth paragraph is proportional as well. And the last paragraph is also proportional. So there are many different types of fonts available on your computer, and the reason why there are monospaced fonts available on the computer is so that graphic designers have options. However, in most articles and text that you will see online, proportional fonts are used. So I hope you guys enjoyed this lesson. Make sure to subscribe to Sparkle English for more lessons like this one, and I'll see you all in my next lesson.